Hi everyone, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life, and today I want to be talking about hot flushes and night sweats. Now, especially if the weather's hot, like it is here in the UK at the moment, we're having an extended heat wave, and it's hard enough to keep cool as it is without going through the perimenopause and the menopausal hot flushes and night sweats. Now, it's one of the most common symptoms during menopause. And it's happening because you've got fluctuating levels of estrogen and progesterone. And it's thought that they have a very key role in your thermoregulation in the brain, your temperature control. And when the body can't regulate the temperature, it's going to pretend it's very hot and it can't get rid of the heat quick enough. So it's going to produce this sweat. Now, for most people, it's a kind of a surge of heat. Now it can run from your feet upwards, or it can just come about and you just feel hot. And for some people, it's debilitating and can be happening every 15, 20 minutes, which is horrendous. For other people, it's just occasional. But also these night sweats, because they can carry on during the night. So you might wake up in the night just drenched in sweat and the sheets are all wet, and it's really, really not very pleasant at all. Plus the fact that it's interrupting your sleep. What are these? We want to know about, we need to be aware about the triggers that can cause hot flushes, because if you can manage these triggers, you can drastically reduce the occurrence of them. Now, the main triggers are diet related. So these are things like alcohol and caffeine can be triggers for some people. Hot drinks in general can be triggers. If you're just drinking a hot drink and you get one, then you can work out that it's that. Spicy foods is another one, and food sensitivity. So if you're sensitive to things like wheat or dairy, that will produce a cortisol reaction, a stress reaction or inflammation in the body, and that can be a trigger for your hot flush. So those are things to be aware of in your diet, your daily diet. The other thing, another trigger is stress. Now we know this because, if you get a stressful experience or a trigger, you can go straight into a hot flush. And I've seen that happen quite a few times. But it's not just stress as in your workload or what you're doing or your circumstances every day. It's also internal stresses on the body, like a blood sugar imbalance. So it's really important that we're keeping that blood sugar nice and stable, because when you get a low blood sugar, that releases cortisol, and that's a stress on the body, and that can trigger a flush. Dehydration is another one. So if we're going to bed dehydrated and we're waking up at 3 in the morning, that can be a sign that the body's dehydrated, cortisol is released because that's stress, and then a hot flush or a night sweat is triggered. Things like digestive issues can be an internal stress, and nutrient deficiencies as well can be an internal stress on the body. There's lots of others. Smoking is a big one. So if you are smoking, that can be a trigger for your hot flushes. Chemicals and toxins in the environment, they can cause triggers. And medications, so things like antidepressants, hormone treatments, that kind of stuff, that another common trigger for hot flushes. So what do we do about them? So first of all, we know if you know your trigger and you can write a diary or a journal and see whether you can identify any patterns, then try and avoid the triggers. That's the first thing. If that's not working, then there's lots of other things we can do. We can regulate our diet. So in the diet, we can include lots of things that have lots of phytoestrogens. Now, phytoestrogens are plant-based estrogens, and they help to regulate your estrogen levels. So they'll try and pump them up when they're low, and they'll try and bring them down when they're too high. So these are things like flax seeds. That's the biggest source of phytoestrogen. So if you can get some flax seeds in your diet, and I usually say between 1 and 2 tablespoons of milled flax seeds. If you eat them whole, they'll just go straight through. But freshly milled is the best. If you can buy them whole and mill them yourself in a coffee grinder, or if you're buying them milled, just keep them in the fridge because they do go off quite quickly. Flax seeds are brilliant. Lentils and chickpeas are other sources of phytoestrogens, and so is soy. You just want to be careful that we're not eating too much processed soy. So I prefer the fermented type of soy because that's very rich in the Japanese diet. And only 7% of the Japanese seem to suffer from hot flushes. So I don't think they even have a word for menopause because it's not really a big issue for them. And we're thinking it's that because of the soy content in their diet. But they do eat a lot of fermented soy, which is things like miso and tempeh, natto, that kind of stuff. Miso is probably the easiest thing for us to include in our diet because you can get it in paste format, and it's a bit kind of like a savory type taste, a bit marmitey, but not strong. Really good to add to soups and stews and things like that. So that's a good one to do. and lots of healthy fats, because when we're low in fat, our hormones aren't getting the essential raw materials that they need, and they obviously need to be working well for us to avoid these hot flushes. The second thing we need to be doing is managing our stress. Now, I bang on about this all the time because cortisol is it has such an impact on all your hormones, and it's a trigger for hot flushes. So lots of relaxation, lots of self-care, lots of meditation, mindfulness, walks in nature, Epsom salt baths, whatever, reading, whatever it is that you do to relax. Make sure you're doing it every day for at least 10 to 20 minutes if you can. I know that's hard for a lot of women. Sleep, obviously, night sweats are going to be interrupting your sleep, but if we can get as much sleep, and if you are lacking sleep, get some naps in during the day, or have a good lie-in at the weekend, or whatever it is you need to do to catch up. Minimizing your exposure to toxins. Again, this is a huge topic, but the basics are to eat organic as much as possible, to avoid the pesticides, filter your tap water if you can, avoid plastics, and avoid those synthetic fragrances where possible, because they can be triggers. Supplements can help, but it's a bit of a hit and miss kind of thing, because for certain supplements, for some women work brilliantly, and then others it doesn't work at all. So you kind of have to experiment, because these are, herbal supplements are a bit like that. Common ones are sage, hops, black cohosh, dong quai, things like that. And adrenal supplements, adrenal formulations, adaptogens, should I say, can be really helpful as well, because that calm down your adrenals and then stop that cortisol trigger. Again, there are lots of formulas out there. Just make sure you go for a really trusted brand and experiment, and you might find something that works. If all of that doesn't work, then you might want to find out where your hormones are at, and that's what we can help with. We do hormone testing on a regular basis, and it helps to know where your estrogen and progesterone are, because the fluctuating estrogen, again, and the low progesterone can be factors in causing these hot flushes. The other thing that can be factors as well are testosterone. So if you've got low testosterone, you've got variable cortisol, or low thyroid. They all have a bit of an impact in that thermoregulation. So it could be one of those things as well. So we do comprehensive hormone testing, which we can get to the root cause of what might be going on for you. If you'd like to know more about the testing we do, you just go to our contact page on the website, happyhormonesforlife.com, click contact, fill in the little form there, and we'll get back to you and we'll organise a free call. Hope that was helpful. Hope you're all keeping nice and cool, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.